What you're about to hear is not the version of the Vietnam War preserved in recruitment posters or sanitized after-action reports. According to declassified military records and long-suppressed veteran testimonies, U.S. forest snipers in Southeast Asia did not just fight an enemy with rifles and ambushes. They fought the jungle itself. Silent. Watching. Alive. In the dense, humid ecosystems of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, the environment became an active participant in the war. For snipers operating deep behind enemy lines, nature was not neutral terrain. It was an unforgiving adversary that bled them, poisoned them, stalked them, and slowly eroded their minds. Military doctrine prepared these men to calculate wind, distance, and movement. It did not prepare them for a battlefield where the ground itself could kill you without warning. Pay close attention now, because this is the side of the war few are willing to discuss. The jungle was not empty space between firefights. It was a breathing organism, layered and hostile. Triple canopy forests blocked sunlight, trapping heat and moisture at ground level. Temperatures hovered relentlessly above 90 degrees. Humidity soaked uniforms within minutes, turning cloth into dead weight. Boots never dried. Skin never rested. And everywhere, life waited. Veterans would later describe the jungle as too quiet, a silence that didn't feel natural, but predatory. Birds stopped calling. Insects fell still. When the jungle went silent, it meant something had noticed you. For snipers, whose survival depended on remaining motionless for hours or even days, this environment was uniquely cruel. Stillness invited danger. Every second spent prone on the forest floor increased exposure to creatures that evolved to kill silently. One Marine sniper recalled lying in position for nearly 12 hours, afraid to shift his weight even as something moved beneath his chest. Only when extraction came did he discover a venomous snake had been coiled beneath him the entire time, warmed by his body heat. He never felt the bite. Because it never came. But the knowledge stayed with him forever. This is where the war against nature truly began. The undergrowth concealed more than enemy patrols. It hid fangs, stingers, parasites, and predators perfectly adapted to ambush. Venomous snakes blended into leaf litter so seamlessly they were invisible until movement betrayed them. Some strikes were instantaneous. Others came at night, inside perimeter wire, inside boots, inside sleeping bags. Medical evacuation reports confirm multiple sniper casualties from snakebite alone, incidents that occurred without a single shot being fired. And snakes were only the beginning. Leeches infested nearly every stream, puddle, and damp trail. They clung to skin, crawled into socks, under bandages, even into the most intimate places. Snipers would emerge from long stalks weakened from blood loss they hadn't even noticed at the time. The real damage wasn't physical, it was psychological. Imagine remaining perfectly still while feeling something crawl across your skin, and knowing that swatting it away could expose your position and get you killed. So you endure it. You let it feed. You let the jungle take its share. But the most terrifying truth was this: the jungle didn't just host small killers. It housed apex predators. Tigers. Saltwater crocodiles. Official records rarely mentioned them, but veterans did it quietly, reluctantly, often years later. Tiger sightings were dismissed as rumor until patrol logs began to match. Claw marks on trees. Missing livestock. One confirmed incident involved a lone sentry dragged into the darkness without a sound. Snipers understood something most infantry never had to confront: when you lie motionless long enough, you stop being a soldier. You become prey. This realization changed everything. It altered how snipers chose positions, how long they stayed, how they slept, and how their minds processed fear. Combat stress didn't end when firefights stopped. It followed them into the silence, into the darkness, into the buzzing stillness of the jungle night. By the end of their tours, many veterans reported that the sound that haunted them most was not gunfire. It was leaves shifting slowly behind them. In this series, we will examine how the animals of Southeast Asia became an invisible enemy, how venom, parasites, and predators compounded the terror of combat and reshaped survival itself. Each threat escalated the psychological weight carried by snipers already operating at the edge of human endurance. And this is only the beginning. Military manuals warned about enemy snipers, booby traps, and ambush corridors. They did not warn about the ground itself striking back. In the jungles of Southeast Asia, venomous snakes were not rare threats, they were constant ones. Invisible. Patient. Perfectly still. Evolution had trained them for the exact same behavior demanded of a forest sniper: remain unseen, wait, and strike only when success was guaranteed. For men trained to lie motionless for hours, sometimes days, this overlap was catastrophic. According to field medical reports and veteran accounts, snake encounters occurred most often when nothing else was happening. No firefight. No warning. Just a sudden pressure. A sharp burn. And then panic restrained by discipline. The most feared were pit vipers, green, brown, or mottled, blending flawlessly into the jungle floor. Their camouflage was so precise that even experienced trackers often stepped directly on them without seeing a thing. Many bites happened at night, during slow repositioning or while setting up a hide site in failing light. One army sniper described lowering himself into position, inch by inch, breathing shallow, heart rate controlled only to feel something tense beneath his forearm. He froze. He didn't move for nearly 20 minutes. When dawn finally broke enough to reveal the shape, he saw the triangular head inches from his skin. He didn't scream. He didn't move. He waited for the snake to decide. It eventually slid away. That moment, he said, frightened him more than any enemy engagement. Other encounters ended differently. Snakebite incidents were medically urgent but logistically complex. Anti-venom was limited. Evacuation from deep jungle positions took time a venom-stricken sniper often didn't have. Some bites caused immediate swelling and necrosis. Others delivered neurotoxins that slowed breathing, blurred vision, and caused paralysis while the victim remained fully conscious. Imagine trying to stay silent while your own body begins to fail. Some snipers attempted to continue missions after being bitten, fearing that movement or extraction would expose their teams. Others collapsed quietly, radios clenched in numb hands, hoping someone would notice before it was too late. Even when the bite wasn't fatal, it left a mark. Scar tissue. Nerve damage. Chronic pain. But the deeper wound was mental. Every step after that carried doubt. Every patch of leaves became suspect. And snakes weren't only a daytime threat. At night, they entered camps. Slithered through perimeter wire. Sought warmth in boots left outside tents. Veterans told of soldiers bitten while sleeping, venom delivered before the brain could even process pain. One Marine recalled waking up unable to move his legs, convinced at first he'd been shot. He hadn't been. The jungle had simply reached into his shelter. For snipers, the fear wasn't just of being bitten. It was of betraying their position. A startled reaction, a flinch, a shout, a gunshot could draw enemy attention from hundreds of meters away. So they trained themselves not to react. To suppress instinct. To override the body's natural scream for survival. That suppression came at a cost. Long after the war, veterans reported recurring dreams of snakes coiled beneath them, of unseen pressure against skin, of waking suddenly with the certainty that something lethal was inches away. Many developed hypervigilance that never faded, scanning floors, checking shadows, never fully relaxed. The jungle had taught them a lesson no instructor ever could: danger did not announce itself. It waited. And as deadly as venom was, it was still only part of the jungle's arsenal. Because some threats didn't strike once and retreat. Some fed slowly. Relentlessly. Silently. In the next chapter, we descend into the world of parasites, creatures that didn't kill quickly, but drained strength, morale, and sanity one drop at a time. If snakes represented sudden death, parasites represented something far worse for a sniper. Endurance erosion. In the jungles of Vietnam, nothing attacked all at once. It drained you. Quietly. Persistently. Until your body no longer felt like your own. Leeches were everywhere. They thrived in wet soil, shallow streams, rain-soaked vegetation, exactly the environments snipers were forced to crawl through to remain unseen. Barely visible at first, they attached without pain, injecting anticoagulants that kept blood flowing long after they detached. Many men didn't realize they were bleeding until they stood up and felt weakness in their legs. Field reports documented snipers losing significant amounts of blood over multi-day missions, not from combat, but from parasites. The physical sensation was disturbing enough. But the psychological toll was worse. Imagine lying perfectly still in a hide site, heart rate slowed, breathing shallow, when you feel something inching across your skin. You don't know where it is. You don't know how many there are. And you cannot move. Veterans described leeches crawling into socks, under watches, behind knees, into armpits. Some reported finding them inside nostrils or attached to eyelids after river crossings. Removing them incorrectly caused more bleeding, so snipers learned to let them feed until they released on their own. You became part of the jungle's food chain. Blood-feeding insects added another layer of torment. Mosquitoes, sandflies, mites swarming in clouds so dense they appeared like smoke at dusk. Repellents helped briefly, then failed in the heat and rain. Bites became infected. Skin broke down. Sleep disappeared. For snipers, sleep deprivation was already part of the job. The jungle magnified it. You couldn't slap at insects. You couldn't scratch. You couldn't shift position. Every itch became a test of discipline. And discipline came at a psychological price. Many veterans later admitted that it wasn't the pain that broke them, it was the constant awareness that their own bodies were being consumed while they remained powerless to stop it. Over time, this produced a quiet rage, turned inward. A resentment of the environment itself. But parasites didn't just drain blood. They drained morale. Long-range patrols reported men becoming withdrawn, irritable, emotionally numb. Hunger increased. Focus declined. Small mistakes multiplied. A sniper weakened by blood loss or infection was slower to react, slower to think, a liability not just to himself, but to his entire team. Medical officers later acknowledged that jungle-related ailments accounted for a significant percentage of non-combat mission failures. The enemy didn't need to fire a shot. Nature did the work for them. And then there was disease. Malaria. Dengue. Fungal infections that ate into skin. Trenchfoot that never fully healed. Snipers returning from operations with feet permanently damaged, nerves destroyed, muscles weakened. Some never ran properly again. But perhaps the most haunting consequence was mental. Veterans spoke of developing an almost obsessive cleanliness ritual after the war. Long showers. Repeated hand washing. Checking beds, clothes, corners. An inability to relax in human environments. The feeling that something unseen was always feeding. The jungle had rewired their sense of safety. Yet even parasites were not the apex of fear. Because parasites reminded you that you were being consumed slowly. Predators reminded you that you could be taken all at once. In the next part, we confront the rarest and most terrifying encounters of all. The moments when snipers realized that something much larger was watching them, and considering whether they were worth the effort. Most soldiers never encountered them. Most officers denied they existed. But the snipers knew. In the deepest regions of Southeast Asia, far from roads and bases, the jungle still belonged to its original masters. Apex predators that had ruled these ecosystems long before the war and were not impressed by uniforms, rifles, or rank. Tigers. Crocodiles. To acknowledge them officially would have meant admitting something uncomfortable, that American forces were not always at the top of the food chain. Veteran testimonies speak carefully about these encounters, often prefaced with hesitation. Not because they were unsure of what they saw, but because they knew how unbelievable it sounded. A sniper lying motionless for hours begins to notice patterns others miss. Broken branches that weren't broken yesterday. Game trails that suddenly go quiet. The feeling, impossible to quantify, of being observed from behind the foliage. One Army sniper described sensing pressure before danger. Not sound. Not movement. Pressure. as if the jungle itself had leaned closer. Then he saw the eyes. Low. Wide. Unblinking. Tigers were rare, but not mythical. Indochinese tigers once roamed large portions of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. They were ambush hunters, silent, patient, and perfectly adapted to dense cover. Exactly like snipers. That similarity was unsettling. Patrol reports occasionally referenced large animal activity near positions. Claw marks on trees higher than any human reach. Drag marks leading into vegetation too dense to follow. In at least one documented case, a lone sentry was taken from a perimeter without a sound. No gunfire. No struggle. Just absence. For snipers, the realization was chilling. Remaining still, their greatest defense, could also mark them as vulnerable prey. You don't look like a threat when you don't move. You look like food. Crocodiles presented a different terror. Rivers were lifelines and death traps. Snipers crossed them at night, silently, weapons held overhead, eyes scanning for enemy movement. What they couldn't see were the shapes beneath the surface, ancient, armored, waiting. Saltwater crocodiles were known to inhabit river deltas and mangrove systems. They were opportunistic predators, drawn to vibration and heat. A man slipping quietly into the water was exactly that. Veterans recalled being warned informally, never officially, to avoid certain riverbanks. Too quiet. Too many fish suddenly fleeing. Too many bubbles rising where nothing should be breathing. One sniper team reported losing equipment pulled underwater during a crossing. They never tried to retrieve it. No one needed to explain why. Unlike snakes or insects, these predators didn't leave marks you survived with. There were no scars. No medevac reports. Just men who never returned, classified under unknown circumstances or presumed enemy action. And that uncertainty did something terrible to the mind. Because you couldn't prepare for it. You couldn't plan against it. You could only exist within its possibility. Snipers began choosing positions differently. Avoiding animal trails. Staying away from water sources even when dehydration set in. Sleeping lighter, if sleeping at all. Some admitted to firing warning shots at night, not at the enemy, but into the darkness, just to feel less alone. That single gunshot broke every rule of sniper discipline. But fear breaks rules. By the end of long deployments, many snipers reported a complete collapse of the boundary between combat threat and environmental threat. The jungle, the enemy, the animals all merged into a single, omnipresent danger. There was no safe silence anymore. Only waiting. And waiting is where the damage settled deepest. In the final part, we will examine how surviving this constant pressure reshaped the sniper's psychology forever and why, decades later, many veterans say the jungle never truly let them go. When the war ended, the jungle did not. That was the truth many snipers carried back with them, quietly, privately, often without words strong enough to explain it. The firefight stopped. The missions ended. The rifles were turned in. But the psychological imprint left by Southeast Asia's living battlefield remained deeply embedded. Because the jungle had not simply threatened their lives. It had reshaped how they understood existence itself. Snipers returned home with a heightened awareness that never fully powered down. They noticed movement others ignored. They reacted to silence more than to noise. A rustle in leaves. A shadow out of place. A sudden stillness in a room. Their nervous systems had been trained to interpret these as warnings, because in Vietnam, they were. Many veterans later admitted that combat itself was not what haunted them most. It was lying still. It was waiting. It was knowing that danger didn't always announce itself with gunfire or explosions. Sometimes it crawled. Sometimes it slithered. Sometimes it watched patiently, deciding whether you were worth the effort. The jungle had taught them that survival was not about strength or aggression, but about endurance under constant, invisible pressure. The kind that seeps into thought patterns. Into sleep. Into how you walk through the world long after the threat is gone. Psychologists studying Vietnam veterans would later note unusually high levels of hypervigilance, sensory sensitivity, and environmental anxiety among former snipers. Many struggled in crowded cities. Others couldn't tolerate humidity, insects, or darkness. Some avoided forests altogether. They had learned at great cost that nature is not passive. It responds. And in Southeast Asia, it responded with venom, parasites, predators, and silence. Veteran interviews often return to the same theme: respect. Not fear, respect. A deep, sober understanding that humans are not always dominant, not always in control. That the jungle did not care about ideology, strategy, or sides. It acted according to ancient rules, indifferent to uniforms and flags. For some snipers, this realization became grounding. For others, it became unbearable. But all carried it. The Vietnam War is remembered for helicopters, firefights, and political controversy. Yet for the men who lay motionless beneath triple canopy forests, the war was also fought inch by inch against an ecosystem that never stopped testing them. The enemy could be seen. The jungle could not. And in that unseen space, something changed forever. Today, as we reflect on these stories, the purpose is not sensationalism. It is recognition. Recognition of an overlooked dimension of warfare and of the psychological resilience demanded of those who endured it. If this story gave you a deeper understanding of what those men faced, take a moment to honor that experience. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel.